Hey, everybody. As you know, editing podcasts takes time, and we're always looking for ways to become faster at it. So, here are 5 ways that have sped up my editing times. It's actually 6 ways, but 5 sounds better. So, you get 5 plus a bonus in this video. The good news is 2 of them won't cost you a dime. So, let's get started. Number 1, I switched DAWs. Believe it or not, this one saved me more time than anything else. The workflow of your DAW is more important than anything else when it comes to editing. I've always seen people suggest changing DAWs met with trepidation online. It's always met with comments like, "I'm already efficient with my current DAW," or "I've already put in my 10,000 hours and I'm not switching." I'm not here to tell you to change your DAW. If you think your DAW is great, stick with it. And look, I get it. I've been using Logic for 20 years, or I had been using Logic for 20 years when I started editing. I knew it inside and out. But it really didn't take long for me to see that Logic wasn't a great choice for editing, at least for me. I know others who love it for editing, but I found it clunky. It just doesn't natively handle ripple editing. So I had to use a combination of key commands just to do simple things. I spent 3 months trying out different software: Hindenburg, Luna, Audacity, Audition, Logic, Luna, and Hindenburg. Hindenburg didn't last a day because of the waveforms, but the workflow was good. Luna, it was usable. I tried it out for 30 days, but since it's a newer DAW, and there were some frustrations there due to missing features, I decided to keep looking. Audacity, look, it just didn't last an hour. Same with Audition. They didn't offer a streamlined workflow that I was looking for, so it was back to Logic for a month. The experience was still the same in Logic. It just wasn't working for me, so I went back to Luna. Still the same frustrations. Hindenburg offered me the workflow I'd been looking for, so I decided to go back and force myself to use it for the full 30-day trial. And I ended up actually buying it after a week of use. The workflow was great. The waveform display is actually better than a standard waveform. Once I understood and could read it, I could more easily see where the syllables were, and that allowed me to find edit points much quicker when I needed to splice words together. So Hindenburg, that took me from 8 hours an episode down to 5. And we're talking about 1-hour episodes here. And remember, I was brand new to podcast editing when I made this switch, but I wasn't new to audio work. Number 2, programmable mouse, Stream Deck, and automation software. I switched to the Logitech MX Master 3 programmable mouse when I made the switch to Hindenburg. I needed to make a switch there because I was getting pain in my wrist when I was editing with the Apple Magic Mouse. The biggest need for me was the ability to scroll horizontally and vertically. I'd become very accustomed to being able to do that with the Magic Mouse, and it's become essential to my way of working. It's so nice being able to scroll the timeline horizontally, and the MX Master has both a traditional scroll wheel, but a secondary one that can be used with the thumb. Next, I programmed the mouse so that I could perform all of my basic editing moves from the mouse itself. That's a small little efficiency boost. More recently, I've added a Stream Deck and automation software like Keyboard Maestro and Better Touch Tool. I like my key commands to be on the left side of the keyboard, and whenever possible, I want that to be a one-key shortcut. That allows me to keep my right hand on the mouse and my left hand free to use key commands. Hindenburg doesn't allow customized key commands, so I needed to find a solution there. I have used Keyboard Maestro for this, but it couldn't handle the triple click that I need when editing in Hindenburg. This led me to Better Touch Tool, which does have a good triple click function. And I've used this to build custom macros that would take 2 or 3 key commands, and now I can handle them all with one keystroke. These tools have shaved a little bit of time off my editing time, but it's made things a lot easier on the wrist. Number 3, I ditched the RX standalone editor. One of the biggest bottlenecks in my workflow has always been RX. I would spend, 10, 15 minutes per track cleaning up the audio, not counting the render times for any batch processing I used. Then one day, I'd heard about Goyo, which is now known as Supertone Clear, and this really changed things. I now have comparable noise and reverb reduction in a plugin. That saves me 15 to 20 minutes that I was spending in RX. And if Clear doesn't work, I have Cedar Audio's VoiceX. And if neither of those work, I've got Sentai's DX Revive. After that, I'm not wasting any more time on the cleanup. And to clarify, I still use RX, but it's all plugins now. So things like mouth declick, deplosive, and voice denoise. Number 4, I embraced AI-powered mixing plugins. Now that I've eliminated RX, I set my sights on my mix. I was spending probably 10 to 15 minutes per guest track and wanted to shorten that. I saw Brian Ensminger mention Sonable smart plugins, so I decided to download the demos and see how they worked. I was sold on the smart compressor right away. It dialed in compression well on whatever I threw at it. And on top of that, it has an input writer function, which is similar to Wave's gain writer. Basically, it aims to keep the input signal relatively consistent. So the input writer, it handles the macro dynamics, while the compressor section handles the micro dynamics, making this like 2 plugins in one. Next was the Smart EQ. I wasn't really sure what I thought about it at first. In some cases, I was able to do better manually with FabFilter's Pro Q3, and in other situations, it was a draw. So I decided to put it to a test. I started using the Smart Comp and Smart EQ on client episodes, waiting to see if anybody said anything. No one did. So I stuck with them. Now I use them mostly as is. The only changes I'll make are to the EQ by adding a high-pass filter, and sometimes I'll reduce the low-end boost that it likes to add. I still do custom presets for each host in FabFilter's Pro Q3 though. More recently, I've started using the Smart Gate and Smart Limit. Smart Limit made things easier for me to get everything up to -16 LUFS while I edit. This way I hear everything at the final loudness as I edit. Before this, I really hadn't been doing any loudness management until I was done editing and used RX to process the master to my target. I feel better now that I can hear the mix at my target level. I've never really used gating and would use downward expansion sparingly if needed, but Smart Gate has become a staple in my workflow. It's the only gate that works for what we do, for podcast editors or dialogue editing. It does a pretty good job of gating out the things we don't want while leaving the voice intact. There's still the occasional sound that will pass through, but it saves me a lot of time from cutting out those quiet little noises that are still audible. SmartGate also works well as a breath reduction tool, and one of the biggest things it does for me is it gates out those mouse clicks that I get on my tutorial videos. So that saves me a lot of time, especially since I'm using a condenser mic now. So those 4 Sonable plugins, along with Hindenburg's auto level, have reduced my mix time to the point that I can probably have my mix set up in 1 or 2 minutes, my rough mix at least. I might still need to tweak the makeup gain on a compressor or tweak the gain on the limiter as I go, but the mix is 90% of the way there when I start. Number 5, I stopped chasing perfection. This one was a mindset shift. It's so easy to fall into the trap of aiming for perfection, especially with creative work for clients. We need to acknowledge for ourselves that perfection, it doesn't exist. We're going to hear things differently from day to day for many different reasons. Maybe you were hungry or distracted or just having a bad day. If we listen back, we're always going to hear things that we missed or that we wish we would have done differently, but at some point, we just have to be done. I started to change this mindset by building processes that ensure that I'm not suffering from self-inflicted scope creep. Moving my cleanup process out of RX meant that I'm no longer spending more time than I should cleaning up bad audio. And it's so easy to end up spending more time than you should on cleaning up bad audio. I also worked on improving my decision making and how quickly I decide to move on from an edit that is proving to be a challenge. Once I get through the edit, I'm done. That's it. If the client has edit requests, I'll make those, but when I'm done, my editing process is complete. And more than anything, I started asking myself whether removing this or leaving that in. I'd ask myself, will this one thing make somebody stop listening? And will this one thing be a fireable offense? And the answer to these questions is always no. If I'm hitting on everything else, these few things won't be problems. And keep in mind, many things you think are a problem actually aren't. These are real conversations by real people in real spaces. We need to embrace the imperfection and flaws while doing things that will remove distractions. Not all imperfections are distractions. Number 6. Bonus. I set aside time for practice. We all know the saying, practice makes perfect. It's a cliche for a good reason. Even though I'm not chasing perfection, the more time I practice, the faster I get. There's no shortcut for experience. But how many of you only get reps when you're on the clock? If you want to be a better editor, a faster editor, you need to dedicate time to developing those skills and that decision making. And sometimes you just need someone who can help you along the way. That's why I offer one-on-one coaching and podcast editing school. I help editors like you become better and more confident in your skills through mentorship, coaching, and education. You can find links in the comments below. So now I want to hear from you. Please share your time-saving tips, tricks, any advice you have about saving time so we can help as many people as possible. And while I've got you, I have one small ask for you. I'm trying to grow my channel, so if you found this video helpful, please help out by commenting, liking, and if you know anyone this video might help, sharing it with them. And if you've learned anything new or valuable, you can always consider leaving me a donation at Ko-fi. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.